Hey everyone, this is Kristen. I'm here to talk to you about something we're a little bit familiar with, which is mandated reporting. However, I'm going to be speaking from the side of reporting abuse to protect the elderly. Okay, so I just want to start off by saying that everyone, not just mandated reporters, should report any type of abuse, especially elder abuse, if they suspect it or if they have witnessed that it has occurred. If you have a doubt, the same thing that we've learned for school counseling is that if you have a doubt, always report it. It's better to be safe than sorry. Um, so, same like reporting for minors, children under 18, reporting can lead to interventions. It can save property, money, dignity, or a life. So it's all serious. So, do what feels right and report. Okay, next, we are going to kind of go through some definitions. I'm going to be speaking about the elderly, and an elderly person is defined as a person who is 65 years of age or older. I'm also going to be talking a little bit about a dependent adult. A dependent adult is somebody who is 18 to 64 years old who has a physical or a mental impairment, which gives them some kind of limitations and they cannot care for themselves, so they have a caretaker. So a caretaker is any person who is in the custody of either a elder, that 65 years of age person, or the dependent adult. Okay. So mandated reporters, as we know, we're usually thinking of school staff, administration, counselors, teachers, the lunch lady, things like that. But in this case, we're going to be thinking about people that are working and serving with elderly people kind of on a day to day. So that includes the clergy, their physicians, bank employees, which is something that I didn't really think about. Um, but older people do have money and do have bank accounts. So that was new to me, learning that bank employees are mandated reporters, employees of a healthcare facility, which makes just natural sense, and any of the individuals who are caring or responsible for an elderly person. So some of the abuse that can happen to an elderly person is similar to abuse that can happen to, you know, anyone who isn't 65 or older. So there's physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. There's also financial abuse. I know I kind of talked a little bit about the bank employees being mandated reporters. So that was something that was kind of new to me, is that the financial abuse, people can steal their money, people can intercept their cash or their checks. There could be telemarketing fraud, there could be identity theft, there could be home improvement scams. So I've listed the physical, emotional neglect, but I did want to touch on the financial abuse. So that's something that can happen. So be aware of things of that nature. If an elderly person has money and then all of a sudden, they're kind of running out of funds, or you're noticing maybe they have more cash or things like that, and you're wondering why, it could be because, maybe they're being taken advantage of for some kind of a scam, unfortunately. So, some of the warning signs that you want to look for in an elderly person is whether or not they're in, the care of someone else, or they're more independent, just from a wide range of elderly people. You always kind of want to look for these type of warning signs, and they may be a little bit secretive, where they don't want to talk in front of certain people, or they don't want to say certain things, or they want you to shut the door to their room if they're at an assisted living. So things like that to be wary of. If they're being taken care of, then there should be no secrets and everything should be okay. Let's see. Abnormal forgetfulness and confusion. So older people, um, you know, they are on medications and whatnot. So maybe they're losing their memory. But if you're noticing someone who's a little more spry, kind of being abnormally forgetful or confused, maybe they're being given the wrong medication. So that's something to be wary of. And the next thing, in my opinion, is like the number one telltale sign of abuse, and that would be a withdrawn attitude. Whether or not they are the type to be kind of, up and out and about, I guess normally functioning. I think anyone with a little bit of a withdrawn attitude, there's something deeper, and that can always be explored. So next, of course, would be like unexplained bruises or welts. And the second thing that's right under this is really disturbing, and it's an injury that's in the shape of another object, meaning like, if an elderly person has like weird shaped bruises, maybe they're being hit with something. I saw a lot of references to older people being tied up. Like, maybe the person's just trying to restrict their mobility, so they're tying them to a chair or something. So that's really disturbing, but that's something to look for. And then there's malnourishment, dehydration, untreated medical conditions. So if you're noticing they do have maybe a quote unquote typical, you know, like kind of like abrasion or something, but it's not being treated, then that could fall under the category of neglect. So that's something to look for. And next is like, if you know an older person and they're looking, a little bit unkempt, they're dirty, they're wearing the same clothes, or their clothes are just, smelly, you kind of want to wonder, or you kind of want to question what's going on, because you're wondering, hey, they should look better than this. Regardless of their age and ability to care for themselves, somebody should be taking care of them. Okay, so this is the penal code for the California law that states the different degrees of consequences that a mandated reporter will suffer if they either abuse or do not report abuse. So this is really long, and it's Penal Code 368, and it goes from A to I think E. So I have all of them broken down, and this is just 1, 2, and 3. So let's see, you could earn jail time, you could be fined, you could be charged with a misdemeanor. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see that, any person who has ill intent to harm an elderly person, there are real consequences to be paid. So yeah, and if you know about the abuse, or if you're abusing, it should not be taken lightly. Like, real consequences can be suffered. And if you have anyone that who's being cared for, you just want to make sure that they're being cared for properly. And then again, it talks about, theft and embezzlement, because elderly people do have property, and they do have funds, and they do have, different things of that nature that that people would want to steal. Let's see what else. Okay, so all that being said, you think something's happening, well, what do I do? It's maybe not common knowledge for us to know where to look or where to go. So I've included a pretty extensive list of phone numbers and websites. Again, this is all geared toward the state of California, which most of us will be working in. Let's see. So the Bureau of Medi-Cal Fraud and Elder Abuse, the Department of Public Health Directory, the California Adult Protective Services Directory, the California Department of Public Health. Oh, I listed that twice. Sorry about that. And the California Department of Social Services reporting. So I found that the California Adult Protective Services is a really big organization and a lot can be started there. So I would say that, I mean, I've included all these others, but this is sometimes referred to as CAPS or CAPS, is very helpful and informative, and a lot can kind of be sorted out through their directory. So their agency does a lot of advocating and investigating for the elderly. Let's see what's next. So these are the phone numbers which I found that were also helpful. The do not call registry I think is really helpful because you want to keep your elderly, that you care about. You want to keep them from being scammed. And I know because I have, my grandmother, she gets several calls, and I'm assuming that it's because of her age and she buys certain prescriptions and maybe those lists are sold, or somehow hacked into. And I feel like old people are always getting like home improvement, people wanting to call, or credit card services or different things of that nature. So even though it seems kind of random, I feel like the do not call registry is pretty important to put an elderly person on, especially if they're living on their own. And then back to the adult protection services. These are just a list of the local programs. So if you know someone who's living in one of these counties and you fear that they're being abused, you can call these, and this is where they'll investigate and they'll advocate for the elderly. So this is a biggie. So a long-term care facility is a nursing home or an adult residential facility or an adult day program, a convalescent home, or a boarding care facility. So a majority of elderly people are being put in these types of care facilities. And so if you suspect that an elderly person is being abused, it should be reported immediately, regardless if they're living independently or in one of these homes. But absolutely, the law should be informed within 24 hours. The police, they should get involved. And then this is when you would call this long-term care a bedsman. I don't know how to say that. But they will get involved right away, and they will make sure that things are made right by the elderly person. And this is my list of resources. So I hope that has shed some light on what to do when reporting abuse when it comes to the elderly population. Thank you so much.